Hello artists, welcome back to the art room. Mrs. Lee over here. This week the supplies that we'll need for our art project are scissors, glue, and 2 pieces of paper. Those 2 pieces of paper need to have contrast. Contrast simply means that they need to be the opposite. So if one is light colored, like this paper, then we need something brighter or darker in the background. Here I've used regular copy paper with paper bag. Here I used regular copy paper for my foreground and my background, but I added some tissue paper. You could use paper from the newspaper. You could actually just color it in with a color if you wanted to, just so that you have a little contrast so that you can see your design. So scissors, glue, 2 pieces of paper that have some kind of contrast to them, and we'll get started. This week we're going to put together a couple of concepts that we've talked about, bringing them into a new piece of artwork this week. We talked about value in color a couple of times. We talked about it in terms of when we did our plein air painting and we did a sketch and we found the darkest value and the lightest value and then this mid-range value. And we called that a Notan. Notan is actually a Japanese word and it means the light and dark balance. So that makes sense. We were talking about color value, where the dark colors are versus where the light colors are, and we even added this mid-tone in. This week we're going to be doing the Japanese Notan, talking about those 2 extremes of lightness and darkness. You can see this in some of the ancient Japanese paintings that we have. This one is from, well, it's not that ancient, 1887. It's a landscape, and you can see that they only used black and white and used those areas to create their artwork. Here's another cool point that we're also going to review. We've also talked about space in our artwork before. You might remember something similar to this on Dot Day, where we talked about the positive space, which would be the triangle, and the negative space, which is all the area around the triangle. If we were to remove the positive space, we can still see the shape because the negative space is also making the same lines. So if we look back at this beautiful landscape from Japanese art, we can see that these white spaces are just as important as the black lines. So here's one example. I cut out the shape of a leaf. When I flip it over, I actually get the complete look of that leaf now. I went back in and I cut out the details of where maybe the veins on the leaf would be or a highlight would be, and I flipped it over again, and now this side of the leaf has the same detail. Even though one is dark and one is light, we're creating the same space. All right, for our lesson today, we need 1 full sheet of paper for our background. We only need a small square for our foreground. Let me show you how to get the small square if you have a full sheet of paper. We've done this several times this year already, so this probably looks familiar. I'm going to fold my corner over. I'm going to cut off the excess. And now I have a square. This square is wonderful, and if you wanted to make one this big, you sure could, but for a moment I want you to think we're going to be cutting out and then folding it over. So our piece of artwork is going to actually get much bigger in size, and this is probably going to be too big. It will be for me. So to get a smaller square, I'm simply going to fold it top to bottom and side to side. And now I have a smaller square. I can cut along my fold lines, and in the end I'll end up with 4 small squares. When I was getting ready for this lesson, I actually used all 4 of my squares. I only needed 1 for the project, but I started on 1 and then I found some shapes I liked and some shapes I didn't like, and so basically I ended up with 3 practice squares and then 1 that I actually made my final project from. So we have our small square and our large square, and we're ready to begin. As we start cutting, we're going to be using all 4 sides of our square. So we're going to cut a design into each of these 4 sides. If you want to, you can grab a pencil and you can outline your design first and then cut it, or you can just start cutting, which is what I'll do. Maybe watch me cut my designs out. Watch the process of how we're going to make this before you start cutting. It might give you some ideas, help you decide which way you're going to go with your patterns. On this first one, I'm going to do some zigzag lines. Maybe watch what I'm doing here just to get some ideas before you start. You're going to need to keep all these little pieces, okay? So there's one side. Let me turn it over on this side. I'm going to do something a little more organic, something that has a wave to it. So there's two sides. On this third side, I'm going to go with organic again, these curved lines. And on this final side, I'm going to go with angles, something like this. All right, so I'm going to put all these little extras to the side. We're going to use them in just a moment. First, I need to glue down my center point. Let's glue it closest to the center that we can. And remember, you can flip your paper over, give it a little rub on the back, just to help all those edges stick. Give it a little pressure. All right, we're going to go in now and we're going to fit these in as if we're doing a puzzle. Let's find where all of these shapes fit. And then we're going to flip them out. So if this fits here, when I open it up, it's going to look something like this. Hey, I made the Batman symbol. And like this. And if you have glue on your fingers, your paper's going to want to go with you. All right, that's kind of cool. We've created symmetrical images or mirror images of our shapes using our positive and negative space. This is great, but there's one more thing we can do. What if we go back in and I'm going to copy the same line that I did the first time, and we create another layer. So this fits here. This one in here. Now I'm going to flip it back over and create it here. And maybe I go one more time. I could even do a different shape in the center if I wanted. So this was here, and now I take this and I flip it over to here. We're just creating more and more interest as we add these details. There we have it. Kind of a fun design with positive and negative space. You could change your square into a diamond if you wanted. Again, remember that if you're like me, you probably have more sheets of paper. This first one is practice. Go ahead and make a second one if you'd like. Keep going. Maybe you found one shape you liked, a few you didn't, and you can do something different for your next one. When you get your final design, glue it all onto your paper. Give it a little rub on the back to make sure it sticks. And don't forget to send me a picture if you have time. I would love to see it. Positive and negative space is very helpful when we're drawing. It's helpful just as an observation technique to see things. And it also makes some pretty cool art all on its own. Thanks for doing art with me today. I'll look forward to seeing you back here in the art room next week.